Where is Michael Penix already ahead of the curve, and where does he need to play catch up to be one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL this season?
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day. And if you do not know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman, a.k.a. Mr. Drew, a.k.a. the iron that sharpens the iron, a.k.a. Mr. a.k.a. And I've been covering the Atlanta Falcons for almost 2 decades, formerly at FalcFans.com, RIP. Been podcasting for over a decade on this illustrious podcast and its previous incarnations. And I appreciate each and every one of you that is an everydayer, whether you were the one person listening to this podcast way back in 2011, or you're one of hundreds, if not thousands, of people that make this podcast your first listen each and every day today to become an everydayer. And all you got to do to become an everydayer, guys, to make this podcast your first listen each and every day, all you got to do, just 2 things. 1 thing, really, subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I say 2 because, if you can hit us up on YouTube as well as wherever else you get a podcast, that doubles the chances that you can listen to this podcast each and every day. But, you only got to do 1 and still check that box. So without further ado, try to tell you how you can listen to the podcast. Let's get into what today's podcast is going to be, where we are joined by JP Acosta of SB Nation, who covers the NFL, to talk all about Michael Penix, the offensive ceiling, as well as what he thinks on the Falcons defense. And let's get into that conversation with JP right now. All right, guys, we are back with another illustrious guest. He is JP Acosta, who covers the NFL for SB Nation, and we're going to be talking about this Falcons 2025 outlook, talking about the defense as well as their offense. JP, my friend, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on.
So, JP, when you just recently did a breakdown of Michael Penix over at SB Nation, we'll try to remember to link in the description below. I always say that when I'm recording it, and then when I upload the episode, I completely forget about it. So it will be in there at some point. It's just a matter of when I remember to link it to you. But, in that breakdown, you went through some of the pros, the cons of Michael Penix. But for those people that are more, auditory inclined, what are some of the things that you think, let's start with the pros. What are some of the things that you think Michael Penix did well in his 3 starts that you think can carry over into this 2025 season?
So the first thing that really stood out to me is somewhere where he did really well was adjusting to pressure. And that's something that a lot of young quarterbacks, they need to find their answers to when they're very early in their career. Most guys, they can either beat pressure with their arm. You think of guys like Justin Herbert, who were able to beat the blitz by just throwing in the voids where no other quarterback can really go. You think about the guys like Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, they can all beat the blitz with their legs. And you think of the older quarterbacks like Peyton Manning. You think of Aaron Rodgers currently, who beat the blitz with their mind. And I think where Michael Penix Jr. really showed a lot of growth is he knows that he's not the greatest athlete by NFL quarterback standards, but he was able to beat the blitz with his mind and with his arm. He was able to diagnose blitzes and pressures really quickly. And I think that really plays into the base stats. Don't look very they look kind of pedestrian, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. But when you go back and watch the interceptions, you can understand that 1 was on a wrong route. I think everybody said it was a wrong route after the game. 2 were drop passes, but the advanced stats show that he was able to mitigate catastrophic plays like sacks, interceptions, while able to maximize the big plays. And I think that's something where you're really hitting the sweet spot as a quarterback. And so if he's able to continue to limit all those negative plays in this offense by just beating the blitz with an arm and with his mind, and able to mitigate all those catastrophic plays like sacks, which he did a really good job of last season, I think the sky's the limit for him.
Yeah. And you bring that up, and my mind can't help but think to the last time the Falcons had a young quarterback who could not mitigate those disastrous plays in Desmond Ridder, and you didn't even get the sort of high upside plays to sort of cancel those things out, that volatility that, you bring up Josh Allen. That's what Josh Allen was very volatile, the high level plays, the high the low level plays in terms of the negativity, and then it kind of balances itself out. And now you just get mostly the high level stuff. But I think Penix is off to a good start when it comes to those things. But getting into some of the areas where you feel like he could potentially improve upon, what are some of those areas?
The first thing that I noticed was he is a very one-touch thrower right now, meaning every pass is 90 miles an hour. It is a fastball, high heat. And I think that's something that he is really worked on. I think some of that has to do with his mechanics, which are just naturally going to be a little bit wonky. You don't really want to mess with a quarterback's mechanics at this stage. Like if it's gotten to the dance, then it'll be fine. But I think something where Penix can improve and where he can improve is just improving some of the touch on some passes downfield and over the middle of the field. There are a lot of times where the ball kind of just dies because I think he's trying to put so much on it. And I think that kind of limits where the offense can go. If you look at the difference between the Kirk Cousins Falcons offense and the Michael Penix Jr. Falcons offense, you can see, like, if you look at heat maps, you can see the difference in how both guys want to play. Michael Penix is more towards the edges of the field, more downfield, more explosive, don't really have the middle of the field stuff yet. And that's where I think he can continue to unlock his game. But because you have the explosiveness and sort of a little bit more volatility over the edges of the field, you're willing to work with him in that middle of the field area because he's shown that he can do it. It's just getting him to do it consistently. And I think that goes down to mechanics and then just showing a little bit more touch on passes.
Yeah, all that makes sense. And I kind of want to continue that conversation when we talk about the offense and the Falcons' offensive ceiling and talking about how defenses are going to play Michael Penix, because you mentioned that sort of explosive, arm talent ability. And one of the things we've talked about here on Locked On Falcons is that sort of verticality that you're going to have in the offense that you didn't necessarily have with Kirk Cousins. But I'm curious to pick your brain. Do you expect NFL defenses to try to take that away with the sort of style of defense that is prevalent in today's NFL? And we'll get into all of that, as well as talk about this Falcons offensive overall ceiling as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. So it is the summertime, and I know many of you guys are looking for a break from the everyday situation. The kids are home from school or whatnot, and you're just trying to get them out of the house so that you can subject that energy elsewhere. And of course, in order to do that, you got to make sure you understand where your finances are coming from. And sometimes you look at your bank account, you wonder, where did all my money go? And, whether it's, all the kids' activities, the daily activities, dining out, online shopping, whatever, it's easy to lose track of where all that money is. And that's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO is going to give you all the visibility and control that you need over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center, and you can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, and even plan those short-term over the summer or long-term goals over the next couple of summers. So you can just stop managing your money and start building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money by using code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com, and you'll get 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. So we're talking about that explosive vertical element that Michael Penix's arm talent brings to the table, and you can imagine a world where the Falcons are being able to generate more of those explosive plays. But one of the revolutions that has sort of been ongoing in the NFL is the way that defenses are trying to play nowadays, as opposed to maybe a decade or more ago, it was always like, we're going to stop the run first and then we'll build off of that. And now the way that defenses like to play is we're going to stop the explosive pass first and then build sort of off of that. And I'm curious, do you expect defenses to try to play the Falcons that way that we've seen teams with, these big armed, talented quarterbacks like the Chiefs, like the Bills, et cetera, where they're just basically, we're going to try to shut down the deep ball and make you sort of dink and dunk your way down the field? And how do you expect Penix to be able to handle that this year?
I think so. And I think it's largely because, like we said before, the Penix heat map shows a lot of passes on the sideline. I think I think his completion percentage was around the mid 50s, like 53, 54%. And when you go back and watch all of his passes, it makes sense that it's 54% because all the passes are on the sideline. Those are naturally going to be more 50-50 chances because you have the sideline to contest with. I think that's where all the explosive plays come from. But going into 2025, I expect a lot more defenses to play more cloud coverage, kind of keep a lid on the edge of the defense and force him to work the middle of the field where some holes are going to be. But, being a younger quarterback, he's a lot better at moving one defender on the edge of a defense than moving a one defender in the middle of the field where there's so many different moving parts. And I think that's something where I would like to see him improve and where I think this Falcons offense still has a lot of untapped potential. But you can also make the argument that you don't necessarily need it with as good of a run game as the Falcons have. You think of a team like the Packers and Jordan Love, where they use their run game as their form of being successful on offense. And by successful, I mean we're getting 4 or 5 yards a pop. We're getting these constant, that is their version of a check down, is a run play. You don't necessarily have to ask Jordan Love to check the ball down. It's okay if we're throwing the ball, it's 15, 20 yards downfield. If we don't get it, we're going to get 5 yards the next play on a run play. And I think that's something where you can start with the Falcons offense in 2025 just being that. We're going to be super explosive, throwing the ball downfield. It might not work, but we have the run game to lean on so that we can make every third down a 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5, instead of trying to go deep on every single play and making it 3rd and long, making it difficult on your quarterback. But as the season goes on, I expect Zach Robinson to start adding in a little bit more of that middle of the field stuff to help Penix grow and kind of help unlock more of that offense to make it truly impossible to defend.
Now, when you talk about the untapped potential, I think you paint a reasonable portrait for what this offense has the capability of being. And obviously, I think you sort of touched upon it a little bit with the idea that you're not going to get the fully formed version of what this offense is going to be with a young Michael Penix out of the gates here in Atlanta. But I'm curious, when we're, projecting sort of where this offense can be, maybe potentially by years in, when they're closer to that fully formed entity. Again, only in year 2 of Michael Penix, and you imagine a situation where, the year 5 version of Michael Penix is going to be a lot better than what you're getting this year. But sort of what do you sort of see this offense's ceiling? Do you feel like this is an offense that could potentially be a top 5, top 10 caliber unit this upcoming season?
I think so. And I think it's because of how many explosive elements they have in this offense. And I think I'm a big fan of Zach Robinson. I was a big fan of him when he first got the job. And I like what he does in terms of it's sort of the purest distillation of the Sean McVay offense, where they're going to run a lot of outside zone. They want to try and boot off of that. There was a lot more play action and a lot more boot action with Michael Penix Jr. in the game as a starting quarterback. But I also think he's sort of modernized what McVay has done by adding more middle of the field stuff for Kirk Cousins, which I think you can add in for Penix later on in the season. I think realistically, you should look at, you want to remain explosive through the first part of the season. If you're the Falcons offense, you want to keep seeing Michael Penix take and make those downfield shots, rely on the run game to be successful, rely on the run game to help you retain efficiency. But then as the season goes on, I mean, we're gonna get to a full season of Michael Penix as a starter in game 12 of this season. So fully, I'm expecting around then for Penix to really have a good grasp of what this offense can be over the middle of the field, and hopefully he'll be able to start doing some more eye manipulation, movement manipulation of those middle of the field defenders.
Absolutely. So, JP, I'm curious, when we talk about, the long-term future and long-term outlook of this Falcon team, I'm curious, how optimistic are you, like, when we look ahead to where this offense could be 3 years from now, right? Where 3 years of Michael Penix, at that point, you potentially locked up guys like Drake London and Bijan Robinson to long-term contracts as sort of core foundational pieces of this offense. Obviously, the Falcons have invested a lot of premium resources into that side of the ball, particularly at the skill position players, with the idea that this is going to be an offense that can perennially be a top 5 unit and one of the best in the league. I'm curious, how bullish are you at this stage on that vision coming true?
I'm pretty bullish, especially if Zach Robinson continues to remain as offensive coordinator, if he's able to ingrain a little bit more of his offensive vision, not only on the players on the team, but in the coaching staff. I think if this season goes really well for the Falcons offensively, he might end up getting a head coaching job sometime soon. But I think 3 years down the line, if this offensive system remains the same, if the players, if you get Drake London, if you get Bijan Robinson still together as your core, I have a little bit of questions about the continuity up front on the offensive line. You know, I think Caleb McGarry is a better run blocker than he is pass protector. Keeping Chris Lindstrom around is going to be great. I have questions a little bit about Jake Matthews' longevity, how long he's going to continue to play. But if you're able to keep some of that core up front around, there's no reason why this offense shouldn't be a top 10, top 5 offense in 3 years, because you have all the elements of being explosive in the pass game and the run game, but you can also be efficient in both areas as well.
Yeah, I think we'll see how the Falcons manage it. Obviously, this will be a big year for this offense. And then, I think the vision is, we've sort of planted all the seeds to reap the benefits at the skill positions, but we might have to replant some of those seeds on the offensive line over the next couple of years. And hopefully, you don't necessarily have to go out there and replace 3+ starters or anything like that. It's just 1 or 2 pieces that you have to add to sort of resolve that. And I think that puts the Falcons in prime position. But that's our conversation on the potential vision for the Falcons offense. I want to wrap up today's episode talking with JP about what is his vision for this Falcons defense as well as their pass rush. And we'll do that to wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. So JP, you were recently on the Mina Kimes show featuring Lenny, and you were talking about various X factors for all the NFC teams. And for the Atlanta Falcons, you selected Jaylen Walker. And for those unfamiliar with the format, they were not allowed to pick a quarterback. That's why they didn't pick Michael Penix, who's the obvious sort of low-hanging fruit when it comes to that conversation. But I'm curious, could you explain why Jaylen Walker specifically for the Falcons, and sort of that, I guess, gets us into an overall conversation about this Falcons pass rush? I'll ask a similar question. How bullish are you on this Falcons pass rush now that they've finally, after seemingly 2 decades, finally invested in that side of the ball?
So I'm intrigued by the Falcons pass rush. I don't think I'm not going to say they're going to be like a top 10 unit. I'm not going to say anything crazy like that, but I think they have potential to get good pressure numbers and good sack numbers from everybody on the roster. It's not going to be a 1-star heavy like pass rush production. With all the simulated pressures that Raheem Morris wants to run, and it seemed like he was running really well after he sort of took the reins of play calling. It felt like he was running his defense, which is why I'm really curious about the Jeff Ulbrich factor in this defense. I'm curious what he's going to bring to the defense. But when you look at all the guys they have up front, you think of guys like Jaylen Walker and Caden Ellis, who are also, they can blitz, they can play in coverage. I think you can run a lot of those simulated pressure looks where you're bringing guys and dropping guys from different areas. You have a guy in James Pierce Jr. who he doesn't have to play early on early downs. You don't have to play him against the run if you don't want to. You can make him a designated pass rusher. I think with Ebiketie around, you can still try and get some more explosiveness on early down reps. I think having Braylon Trice back, hopefully, I was a big fan of Trice coming out of Washington. I think he was going to be a really good high effort pass rusher for a team. And I think if he's healthy, you can still get that. And then you have veterans. You have Leonard Floyd on the team. And I think that's something that you can continue to build around this pass rush group, as not only they're not going to be a group that's going to get like super big pass rush numbers from one guy. One guy is not going to have 15 sacks, but I think they're going to be like 3 or 4 guys that could possibly get 5, 6, and they're going to get more as a unit. I hate to use Moneyball as an example, but they're going to recreate pass rush in the aggregate. They're going to get so many people, and they're just going to flood guys with simulated pressures, with different looks where everybody gets a chance to score.
Okay. And I'm curious, does that intrigue that you say for the Falcons pass rush, does that apply to the Falcons defense as a whole? And is that intrigue due to what you're talking about, that trying to blend sort of what Raheem Morris was doing last year, and that the Falcons did have some success in the latter half of the season when Morris was putting more of his fingerprints on the defensive game plan, as well as what some of the things that Jeff Ulbrich did well the last couple of years, not so much in 2024, but in previous years with the New York Jets. Where do you sort of see this Falcons defense? I'll just say, like, for me, all off season long, it's like, okay, if there's going to be one very good unit on this team, it's going to be the offense that has the potential to be that sort of top 10 unit. And if the offense can achieve that, then the defense just kind of has to be good enough, right, to complement that thing. Do you feel like, the bar should be set higher for this defense? Do you feel like they can achieve that bar? What are your thoughts on this defense overall?
I'm cautiously optimistic about this defense. I'm hedging a lot because I just want to see the pass rush unit in action. I want to see how this like weird mixture of Jeff Ulbrich and Raheem Morris's defense works out. But last season, they were 28th in EPA per play given up. They were at the bottom of every defensive metric, and the Falcons were still one game away from making the playoffs. All you have to be potentially for this defense is not the worst defense in the league. And I think they have improved on that. I'm curious what they do at the second outside corner spot next to AJ Terrell. But if you can find some pass rush groupings, if you can get consistent pressure from everybody on the roster instead of just one dominant guy, and then get your stars like Jesse Bates, AJ Terrell, if you can get them to make splash plays instead of, just if you want the blanket, of course you want the blanket coverage every single play, but if you can get splash plays from your impact guys, maybe that's enough for them to get to the playoffs. You don't necessarily have to be dominant, but if you're a defense that relies a lot on volatility, if you can create negative plays like turnovers, sacks, I mean, the Commanders use that formula to get to the NFC Championship. So I think if the Falcons can get a little bit more, if they can get more chaotic plays from their defense, you can get more turnovers, get more sacks, get more pressure. I think you're going to see this defense improve from being at the bottom of the league to, if you can just get to around league average, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I think it seems like that was kind of the strategy with their draft selections, where they go with 2 pass rushers in round 1 to get the sacks, and then they go with 2 DBs in rounds 3 and 4 that got a lot of interceptions to get those sort of turnovers and whatnot. And sort of, it's kind of I think volatile is a good way of describing sort of, I think, what the vision is going to be. It's not going to be a unit that I think can stand on its own, but it can sort of complement. If you can get the ball back for the offense and the offense can turn that into points, that's the formula for success. As you mentioned, Washington was able to pull off pretty well last year. But you mentioned the outside cornerback spot opposite AJ Terrell, and because this came up Monday morning when the Green Bay Packers released longtime veteran cornerback Jaire Alexander. Alexander does have connections to various members of this Falcons defensive coaching staff, from Jerry Gray and Justin Hood, the Falcons DB's coach, who formed that, who were in Green Bay with Jaire Alexander the last couple of years before their arrival in Atlanta. I'm curious if the Falcons, hypothetically, I'm not saying that they will, but hypothetically were to pursue Jaire Alexander, would that be a needle mover for you as far as this Falcons defense goes? What do you think of that potential outcome?
I think I would feel a little better about the high-end outcome of what this Falcons defense can be. But I think with Jaire Alexander, I'm just worried about all the injuries. I'm worried about him not being able to hold up for over the course of a 17-game season. And that's where I think the Falcons really need to hammer home. You need to be good. You need to be there, ready, available for a 17-game season. I think if you sign Jaire Alexander and you get 12, 14 out of 17 games from him, I think that'd be a good sign. But it's just that we talked about volatility for the defense. I think Jaire Alexander's health is a little volatile. You never know what's going to be the ailment, and you never know how long he's going to play in a season. And then you're just constantly asking the other players on the team to step up. And we've seen what these guys look like in coverage when asked for bigger roles on the outside. So I would look into it. If I were the Falcons, I wouldn't try and completely sell out for it, though.
Yeah, I think that's a good spot. It's like, you really like what this defense could be for the 4 games that you can trust Jaire Alexander to be healthy for. But then what do you do for the other 13 games where you don't really know what you're going to get on that front? But I'm sure I will be talking more about Jaire Alexander's fit with the Falcons on future episodes all week long. But JP, I appreciate you coming on, sharing your insight into this Falcons team. Let the people know where they can find your stuff and some of the things that you were working on during these dog days of summer when nothing is going on except for talking about the will they, won't they of Kirk. You know, you got that Kirk Cousins show up for mandatory minicamp piece ready to go in the pipe?
Look, Kirk Cousins, if there's ever money involved, if there's money on the line, Kirk gonna be there. You know he is like rent on the first of the month. He gonna be there every single time. But you can find my work at SB Nation. You can find me on social media at Acosta32_JP on Twitter, at Acosta32JP on Blue Sky. Just follow me there, see what I'm doing, see where I'm going. I post a lot of off-season clips from the 2024 NFL season. I'm getting into 2026 draft prospects. So just trying to fill out my time a little bit.
Yeah. Definitely understand how that goes this time of year. I got to come up with some things that I need to write about as well. So we will see what I come up with as well. But of course, always check out JP's stuff, in all the various places that you can find his stuff. Again, I really appreciate you sharing your insight, and I look forward to maybe some future conversations later this fall when we get an opportunity to actually see what this offense and this defense actually is on the football field, and we can actually talk about actual football being played, not speculate about the potential football being played. So I look forward to that conversation.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
So guys, that's going to do it for us here. Thanks to JP for joining us. Look forward to future conversations. We'll get even more Zach Robinson love probably on tomorrow's episode with our guest Trayshawn Diaz of the Falcoholic. He's also a prominent member of the Kyle Pitts bandwagon, so I'm sure we'll pick his brain on that. We'll potentially talk about Jaire Alexander's possibility of coming to Atlanta, as well as, we want to talk a little bit about, Jesse Bates's future as well, long-term future in Atlanta if the Falcons aren't successful this upcoming season, piggybacking on a conversation we had on yesterday's podcast. And of course, we got to talk. We got to, the leading topic is going to be, did Kirk show up for mandatory minicamp? Oh my God. Oh, what's going to happen with Kirk Cousins? Oh, I can't wait to talk about it, guys. So that is all in store for you on tomorrow's Locked On Falcons. So continue to make Locked On Falcons your first listen. All you got to do is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so that you don't miss that episode, and don't miss for your second episode and your second listen, the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast, where Joe Marino, Kyle Krabs are going to get you geared up for this upcoming season. As training camp gets closer and all the moves are being made, they're going to make you the most informed NFL fans that you can be this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It is all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.